Room 237 is a Jumperscape audio production. Ah, stranger, we've missed you. Join us in Room 237.
Hello, and welcome once again into Room 237. It is me, James, once again.
And me, Ashton.
So, damn.
Yeah.
What are we covering today?
The first Omen.
This movie was not at all what I expected it to be.
It was not what I expected it to be either, and right off the bat, I think we need a little bit of a trigger warning. Because I got triggered. I got triggered hard with this movie. So, if you have any trouble with SA or what's the right word for the other thing? Like pregnancy trauma. I do not recommend this movie for you, quite frankly.
So this is a movie. It's a prequel.
Yes.
Oh yeah. With that being said, it's a prequel to The Omen.
Yes.
Its name is very confusing for conversation.
Yes.
Because I got the first Omen, and it's like, from the 70s. No, the first Omen.
You gotta
the
call
prequel.
You had to call it the original Omen and the first Omen. I think is the best way to kind of separate them.
But I will say this movie does kind of build that that movie in very interesting ways, and also a lot of plot holey ways, which I think we'll get into. But this movie, I am so shocked with some of the stuff that they did and got away with.
Oh yeah.
I've seen all of the Omen movies, so I was expecting something just kind of trying to replicate them, in terms of shock value. This movie surpasses it surpasses all of them in shock value, that's for sure. But does it surpass them in story?
Well, right off the bat, it gives like the same kind of vibe.
Oh yeah, the opening title sequence and like just the atmosphere of the beginning of the movie is completely on point.
It gives it's legible, yay! We watched this in the movie theaters, so we took our notes in the movie theaters. So I was worried that it wasn't gonna be legible.
It actually looks pretty good. I gave up after my first two notes because I got a little squint at them and I could see that they were just complete chicken scratch. My handwriting's already bad, so when I don't know how much space I'm putting between letters and words, it gets even worse. You think it would just be all memory, but no, I'm terrible at handwriting. But this movie, it takes place in 1971. I'm not sure if the opening does, like the cold open.
Yeah.
But the whole movie takes place in 1971, which, if you remember, is the year that Damien was born in the original Omen. And we open up with a familiar face, but not a familiar face. It's Father Brennan.
It's Father Brennan, who's being played by... Hold on, I'm finding him in IMDb.
I just had him up. That's the funny thing.
He went missing. There he is. Ralph Ineson.
We'll go with that.
Yeah.
Who is I think our first Room 237 veteran, as he was in The Witch, which you guys have not actually gotten that episode yet.
Yeah, I was going to say
We've already
that.
recorded an episode of The Witch, but he's in that movie.
Yes, he plays the father in The Witch. And actually, he's a slightly younger version of the Patrick Troughton in The Omen, right?
Yeah,
he's
Father
playing
Brennan.
he's playing Father Brennan. And actually, Troughton was 55 when they filmed the original The Omen, and this
We can call him Ralph.
Ralph. Yeah, Ralph was 52. So pretty close, pretty good on the age thing.
And he does a really good job of like obviously being his own version of the character, but kind of capturing the same spirit of that he must die, Mr. Thorne, like
Yes.
kind of energy. But his voice is much more dark and awesome, like than Patrick Troughton was.
He does kill it.
But he has that same kind of intensity that Patrick Troughton did in the original film. But he's meeting up with another priest, and he's trying to get intel basically about the birth of a woman, essentially. It's very vague intentionally because this is the mystery you unwrap. That's the thing. It does keep intact. You know what's happening if you've seen The Omen, but it does keep intact the mystery element of the original Omen movie, where you're just not sure exactly what's going on. And that's the case with this movie. And much like the first Omen, the original Omen, this father meets a very similar fate to Father Brennan's own when a lead pipe falls and hits him in the back of the head. It is so creepy the way they do this.
Well, yeah, it's definitely supposed to foreshadow him dying in The Omen. Like, it's supposed to be a moment where, because I feel like in The Omen, like, while he tries to fight it at the end, Father Brennan does like accept his fate. And I think this is why, like, he continually runs into the same thing almost happening to him.
Exactly.
And you see this moment, and he looks up as this new stained glass window is getting put in this church, and he could see the bottom of a pipe coming like at his face, and I'm like, ooh, the foreshadow.
It's very nice.
It's very nice. A very nice foreshadow.
But it actually hits the other priest in the back of the head, but you don't really see it for sure. And it's kind of like he just kind of keeps talking, like kind of weird. And he just turns around. You can see Father Brennan's face, and he's like, "Father," and he turns around, and you see this gnarly, like, I think it might have been CG, which kind of hurt, but it still looked pretty gnarly.
It did look pretty gnarly.
Gash in the back of his head, and he just like smiles and falls over.
So wait,
You're on the Omen remake.
yeah, no, that's what I was looking at the trivia page. So they remade it. Is this a prequel to the remake or a prequel to the original?
No, it's to the original.
Okay. Is there that many differences between the remake and
Technically,
the
the
original?
remake is basically shot for shot,
Okay.
but spoiler, we see a picture of Gregory Peck as Ambassador Thorne from the original movie at the end of the movie.
Oh, so like it's happening again. Is that what
No.
it says?
This is the original. This is
Oh, that's how we know that
Yes.
this is from the original. Okay,
yes,
gotcha. I
it's
thought
not
that's why I was trying to see if there was actually a difference between the two.
the original and the remake.
Yes.
The remake is pretty much a shot for shot remake.
Okay.
It's pretty bad.
Oh,
It's
okay,
not
heard.
very well liked.
Okay. heard.
Because it is pretty much shot for shot, except they added some spooky nightmares for
okay.
jump scare sakes.
Oh, okay.
But yeah. So that's the cold open.
Yeah.
And we meet our main character, Margaret.
Mm-hmm.
She is a what's the proper term for a not yet a nun? Like an initiate, or
I can't remember the name of that.
So she's a nun in training while Ashton looks up the actual term. And she's being dropped off at this orphanage for girls in Rome. And it is a really pretty old building, you know. You can already kind of like, just this movie has a way of having an uncomfortable vibe the entire time. Even scenes that are supposed to be lighthearted are a little creepy.
Yeah. It's a novicate.
I will call her nun trainee.
It's like you're a novice at being a nun.
But she meets up. She meets up there, and she's, you know, basically there until she, you know, takes her vows and officially, you know, wears the veil and becomes a nun. At least that's what she thinks. And she is being toured around, and she kind of wanders off, and she sees some pictures on a wall, and she starts hearing Ave Maria, basically, a Hail Mary being said behind this door.
Yeah.
The picture is of a woman floating above a bunch of nuns, and oh my God, I forgot about the cold open. I forgot we saw what this picture was like showing in the cold open.
What?
We saw the birth of the girl in this room. There's some scenes in this movie that are just not gonna. I can't describe them. They're very cerebral. They're very hard to watch. If, like the trigger warning said at the beginning, if you can't handle stuff like that, if you can't handle essay or even situations that remind you slightly of it, this is not the movie for you.
Yeah, because I'm pretty good with most of that stuff. But I just like tensed up. I like wanted to fight somebody. I definitely got in a defensive position very quickly.
Yes, this is a movie that I don't know why I didn't see it coming, because it's about the birth of the Antichrist and it's about the mother.
Right, but
I guess I just kind of thought it would have been from an outside perspective,
right?
Like seeing it happen around, like weird things, and then, you know,
because you think of like the Omen, and you think of how it's so the horror is so buried underneath.
It's not the case in this movie. The horror is right in front of you.
The horror is happening in front of you, which is what draws it away. So it's that's what makes it so different than the source material, because with the Omen, the horror, it's not like it's implied or something. It's like it's just like
it's just out of reach.
Yes, you're seeing the world happen around this terrible thing instead of seeing the terrible thing happening and the world still going on around it.
Because when you kind of think about what Damien is, when you do think about the first movie, and why I was so intrigued by the idea of this movie is, honestly, the horrifying part is how he was brought into the world, knowing that a sect of the church did that. And I was curious and also satisfied with the answers given.
I like how they did this. I genuinely like how they did this.
This is going to be because of a lot of the themes being hard to talk about, I imagine this episode is going to be is going to be more review-like than summary-like.
Yeah, and
I think that'd make it easier for us to talk about it.
That makes us easier for us to talk about it, as well as, like, it's a new movie. Go see it.
Exactly.
Unless you have those triggers in which don't trigger yourself to go see a horror movie. Don't make your life harder for no reason.
Like,
there is no catharsis in this. There is no catharsis. You're not going to get anything out of it. Don't go see it.
This is a movie that is just hard. It's rough. I don't have any trauma related to any of this, and it still was a movie that made me so unbearably uncomfortable. Like I straight up like wanted to look away at a lot of points. Like I did look away at a lot of points because it is a uncomfortable movie. And see, for me, that's something that I praise it for, because being a horror movie fan, it's like a drug. Like I'm chasing that next like thing that makes me feel something. And this movie did make me feel something. It just there's never relief ever. Like it just kind of like you get the off like nice moment between Margaret and I forgot her name because they call her a couple names. Basically her mirror image of her when she was young. Carlina. Like you get some nice little moments there with those two, and that's pretty much it. You get a nun on a trampoline smoking a cigarette in this movie, and you know that kind of made me happy. But the movie really kind of maintains this kind of heartbeat pace throughout, is how I would describe it.
Yeah.
You're slowly just moving through it bit by bit.
The pacing is very good.
Oh, it's amazing.
Because we got out of the theater, the movie probably started around 2. We got there around 1:30, and it was 4. And I was like, how in the world is it 4 o'clock? Because it does not feel like I've been sitting watching a movie for that long.
Because the movie both feels long and short. And I think it's because those moments of relief feel like they fly. In those moments where you're just watching something horrific, felt like they went on for an agonizing amount of time.
Yes, because this movie does not shy away. There is no... You would think in a movie with this many nuns that someone would look away at some point.
Nope.
They don't. They just stare directly at the horror.
This movie had to be sent to the MPA for like 5 times, I think. 4 times. Multiple times, I'll just say.
Yeah, it was multiple times. It almost got an NC-17 rating.
Every time they sent it in, the MPA said NC-17. But yeah, so it was 4 times.
It was originally, the specific scene, it was originally 13 seconds before it got cut way down. So that was shorter than 13 seconds.
It felt like 30.
It felt like forever. So
it's weird. I almost don't want to spoil this scene because it was so shocking. Me and Ashton both like just straight up like.
Yeah, it's just shocking. It's not something you expect to see when you're seeing a movie, even a horror movie. Like, it's just something that, like, you're starting to watch the scene and it's just starting to, like, imply that something is happening.
Like, the way I describe it is this is a pretty well-marketed, mainstream horror movie that people... Like, you see ads for it all the time. This is a movie that people who aren't ready for it are gonna see. This is something you'd see in like a really niche like Cronenberg movie, or like a oh man, I'm forgetting the director's name. I have to look it up.
But you're sitting there watching this scene and you're just expecting that implied horror to be all that it is. Because the idea of what they're about to show you is like something, sure, I guess you could witness in real life, but it's not something that you would see in a movie. It's not something that's acceptable.
Lars von Trier. This is something this movie has a lot of things that you'd see in like a Lars von Trier, like Melancholia kind of movie. Like, it is so freaky. It is very triggering for specific reasons. And it's just the issue I have is that I couldn't stop watching.
it's got that draw. Enough of the story is so important that the horror, like, you can't take your eyes off of it. It makes you kind of feel like a disgusting person.
Because it is like you're so locked into this story.
You're so invested.
You want to know the mystery. You want to know what exactly the thing that confused me in this movie was, I think there are some lore changes.
Yeah, and I think what we should do here is we should keep talking about a review for a couple minutes and then just put a spoiler warning.
Yeah.
And then we can talk about the film.
Gotcha. But continuing on, I'll save that for later. I think even with the spoiler section, it's still going to be hard to go chronologically through.
Oh
this
yeah,
movie.
no, I'm not saying. I'm just saying we do want to actually discuss the movie, but if you don't have those triggers, in which, fine. If you have those triggers, go ahead and listen to the podcast and at least just kind of get a sense of the movie before hurting yourself. But if you don't have those triggers, you should go see this movie, because even though I quite literally got defensive with how these scenes are and had a physical and uncontrollable reaction, I still liked this movie. It's still a really good fucking movie. Like, that's the thing. I still left the theater excited. I still was watching the movie excited, even though it completely filled me with so much dread,
and
in a real way.
Oh yeah, and that is definitely the movie's design. This movie wanted to not just be a cheap money grab prequel. It wanted to tell a story that it saw was there.
I gotta look. Who is the director and the writer of this thing? I'm gonna look right now, because it's kind of ingenious.
It is
so good.
Directed by
Arkasha Stevenson, and written by Tim Smith, Arkasha, and Keith Thomas. The story is by Ben Jacoby.
So this is my first movie I've seen by this director, but I see that they worked on Channel Zero, which I fucking love. Channel Zero. We are definitely watching Channel Zero at some point.
All right.
If you don't know, Channel Zero is a criminally underrated show that should not have gotten canceled. Each season tells a different creepypasta.
Oh, that's super
as
cool.
a live action story.
She does not have many credits before this.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
That's insane.
If this is like the big break, holy shit, good job.
Oh my God.
And this is why I love not getting, I don't know what the actual reception of this movie has been. We could be in the minority. Everyone could think this movie sucks. And I wouldn't know. It has a 7 on IMDb, which is about right for most horror movies I've seen. They always hover in that 6 to 8 range, sometimes worse. But I'm curious as to what the Rotten Tomatoes is.
That's what I'm pulling up right now. If it loads.
Oh, that's not bad.
So yeah, audience score is a 68, which isn't super terrible. The
critical is 79.
79,
so
which is pretty good.
I hate Rotten Tomatoes personally, but it still can be a good gauge.
It can be a good gauge on a critic versus audience reaction for sure. I kind of want to see what the cinema score is, so I'm going to look that up right now. You keep talking.
I know it had a 65 on Metacritic.
I kind of have an obsession with cinema score, guys. You'll hear me talk about it a lot.
And this,
even though the website,
I just can't believe that this movie exists.
Yeah. We're gonna keep saying that.
I think I'm gushing really hard about this movie because I think that there's been so much religious horror recently that is terrible. Exorcist Believer comes to mind. like as like the opposite of what this movie was, because Exorcist Believer is a cash grab.
It definitely
doesn't
is.
capture the spirit of the original.
Exorcist
And felt
Believer,
cheap.
we'll have to talk about it on a separate episode because it definitely disappointed the both of us. And especially because that is the first horror movie I've seen in theaters, was Exorcist Believer. Because I've never watched horror in theaters before. Also, the cinema score for First Omen is a C. Which doesn't surprise me because a cinema score is, if you don't know, they take a poll of people coming to a preview or opening night. So it's mostly an assessment of the marketing of the movie more than it is an assessment of the actual movie. So lots of people knowing the Omen, coming to see this movie, and then seeing what we just saw, yeah, they're gonna be pissed. They're not gonna like the movie. And that makes sense with it. Actually, I'm surprised it has a C and not something lower, quite frankly.
Honestly.
That's a test of a good movie.
Like I said, my expectations for this movie were not what I got. But now that I've seen it, I'm like, what else would have I expected? That is, of course, how this story went. You know what I mean? Like, it feels painfully obvious that this is how the story would go. I think it's just the shocker is how close up you are to it.
Yeah.
Because from the previews and the trailers, I was expecting our main character to kind of just see some weird shit and uncover a mystery, which is technically true.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into spoilers yet. I think, should we do spoiler warning? Should we do spoiler warning and start getting into spoilers?
I think it's time to get into the movie. I think it's time to... All right, guys, this is your spoiler warning. Pause. Go to your local movie theater's website, get some tickets, go see it, and then come back because we don't want to ruin the shock value of this movie. I think not that I think if we did, you wouldn't be able to watch it and still be shocked, because you would, but just do it. Just go see it and then come back, because we don't want to ruin the movie.
Exactly. And I'm glad we've decided on this formula for this episode, because right when I hit start on record and we started doing our usual structure, I was like, this isn't going to work.
It's not going to work for this movie. It's not going to work for this movie. But yeah, so we talked about the cold open, which really wasn't a spoiler. And we've gotten to where Sister Margaret got to the orphanage and she saw Carlita. Carlita's kind of weird. As soon as she walks,
she's kind of weird.
As soon as
kind of quirky.
as soon as Margaret comes into the room, she's trying to converse with Carlita, and Carlita really isn't answering. You can tell there's just like, but for me, it read as this is a nonverbal kid.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this scene reads as, is like, this is a nonverbal kid. So she's very careful with it. Margaret's actually really good about talking to her. And then Carlita crawls out from under the bed and licks her face. Just like, and Margaret does not know what to do here. She just goes, like,
okay.
And the sister giving her a tour comes back. And what I have to say about this sister who gave her a tour, her countenance, like what's the right word?
That's the right word.
Countenance or like
cadence.
Cadence. Thank you. I couldn't read it.
Countenance is like your face.
Yeah. I couldn't read what I wrote because I wrote it in a dark movie theater, but that's what I was trying to say. It's so off-putting.
And that's the case for a lot of the nuns and priests in this place. You can just tell. The pace at which they speak is wrong. And it's not because this is in Rome and Margaret's from Massachusetts. Thank you. And of course she's from Massachusetts.
But it's not because English isn't their first language. Like, I'm used to that pace of someone speaking. This is different. This is very different, and it's off-putting enough that you are like, what in the hell is going on?
It's
here?
just like a sneer of like deceit at all times coming out of their tone.
Stay close, stranger. The room awaits you after these messages.
You know,
well, there's too much space between the words. There's just like, and also just not enough that your brain immediately picks up on it. It's like a subconscious amount of space.
and
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because that's the thing, like when you're talking to a non-English speaker, the amount of space between the words, your brain picks up on as, oh, they're trying to think of what the next word is in English. But because the space is just little enough that you know it's not them thinking of the next word, but just long enough that it's off-putting, it's creepy.
It's very creepy.
It bothered me, especially with this specific nun. She had the most of this going on. She was the best at it.
Oh,
at
yeah.
least.
And she's like the main nun antagonist in the movie.
Yeah, she's our main
She's like the head nun.
Yes, and she's like the main she's like the nanny in the Omen. She's the main thing that you keep seeing that you know something is wrong,
But you just don't know.
but you just don't
exactly
know
how it's going to present itself.
Like you don't know what it is really.
And right after this is where we meet. I just called her the nun that looks like Mia Goth.
So her name is Sister Angeline and It was Angelina or Angelica.
She looks just like Mia Goth.
Sister Angelica, which by how it's presented here,
I'm assuming she is the mother of Catalina.
no.
That's the vibe I got. That she was the lady, that she was the woman in the cold open who gave birth.
Oh.
Did you just make this connection?
No,
And that's why she's
the
messed
same
up like
age
that.
as.
Does that sound like they'd be above that?
I mean, no, but that's not what I'm saying. She would have been way too young. Because if she's the same age as Margaret's like maybe 19. And Catalina, she's like 13, 14 maybe. She's a teenager.
I don't know. I thought she might have been a bit older. Like she had already taken her vows and stuff.
No, she hadn't.
I'm talking about the one lady who was just like rubbing the wall.
Oh.
You know, it's all for you.
That's who you're talking.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
We were talking about
That's
different
not-
sisters here.
That's not
It's false
sister,
alarm.
That's not Sister Angelica. That is
The one that looks like Mia Goth. The one
Oh no,
lady
wait,
with
maybe
no
that
eyebrows.
is sister. Hold on. Let me look at the.
Apologies.
That is Sister Angelica. Sorry.
Yes, we're talking about Luz.
I thought.
Luz. That's just her name's Luz.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about Luz. I forgot that we met Sister Angelica here. Yeah, she also has. Yeah, I agree with you. I do think Sister Angelica is
Catalina's mother.
Yeah.
At least it's never really confirmed. You don't even see the woman's face in question.
Mhm.
It's just, why else would she be like that? Is essentially my
'cause
takeaway.
She also kind of presents as a nonverbal person. They said they found her at the church, and she's basically been like a foundling. And
Which we know is probably a hard lie.
yeah, definitely is a hard lie based on the events at the end of the movie. Definitely a hard lie, but she's so creepy.
Oh yeah.
She's got the big eyes. It's like how Anya Taylor-Joy and Mia Goth and all of them, like how they have those big eyes and then they shave off their eyebrows to make them look that kind of scary.
Yeah, it's that kind of scary.
It's that.
I thought it was Mia Goth for a second, but I was like, this is too minor of a role for her. She's hitting the big time in the horror genre.
It is Ishar Curry Wilson.
And she does a great job of being absolutely scary.
Sure, I've seen her in something else though. I'm looking at her.
But just right off the rip,
this is like she is pretty new. She's in something X though. Dreaming X. It's a short.
Dreaming X. But
anyway,
right off the rip, things ain't right.
Mm-hmm.
But she's driven back to her home, and that's where we meet Luz, which is apparently her name. I didn't catch her name in the movie.
No.
And she's
I was talking
she's
about.
presenting as like a cool nun. Like
she's presenting as like, you know how in like rom-coms and stuff, how the main character is like a shy girl who reads books and wears glasses, and she has this one friend who's kind of rebellious and gets her to go to the club and meet a man. She's that character. She's that character. Except she's a nun and she sneaks out at night to go to the club.
And it's so unfortunate.
Disco.
It's so unfortunate because that's exactly what happens. Is she does get Margaret to go out, and I totally, for some reason, bought into the idea of they actually just had a night out and she got too drunk and that was it.
Yeah, and
I
that's
didn't
what
put
we
the
see.
importance on it. Like I was like,
okay, before this though, I have to talk about this because I didn't think you noticed it. Because I pointed to the screen and you were like, "What?" Before this, so we kind of get a sense that Margaret was like a problem child at her orphanage, like that she saw things, had like nightmares and stuff. And she's like, changing out of her nun clothes and stuff. And the room is really dark and we get these eerie noises and it's super fast. And I don't know really what it means. I think it's probably just to unsettle you. But she's like standing there. Your gaze is on something else because she's freaking out about something else. But in the background, in the doorway, you just see a nun run past.
that was a mirror. That was her. I noticed it. That's why I was confused.
That wasn't a mirror. That was a doorway.
No, that was a mirror. She ran back to her bed, and then you saw her reflection also running back to her bed.
No, she was in the frame when I saw this person running. It was behind her shoulder.
Maybe I'm stupid.
No. This is, and she wasn't dressed in her clothes anymore.
I must have totally missed this.
You must have, because I freaked out about it and you did not. No. That was a different part of the scene where we see her reflection run past. Because I remember it was after this happened. Because you hear like footsteps and stuff and all this creepy ambiance, and I can't remember what she's staring at. I think she is staring at herself in the mirror. But it's a doorway behind her, and you just see this nun it's so fast. It is so fast. It just runs past, and I wrote it down.
Wow.
Person walking past fast in background.
Gee, thanks for reading that note. It sure helped. But anyway, Luz, she's the quirky, I like to go out.
Yeah.
Before I take my vows, might as well enjoy my life.
Right. And you know what? And you really trust her for this.
Oh yeah, you buy it. You buy it 100%.
Because she's so real about it. She's like, oh, like, I want to enjoy my life before I become a nun. Like, I know why I'm becoming a nun. I hear God's voice. I know I'm supposed to be here. I was lost. I didn't have a home. I know my home is in the church. But if I'm not going to enjoy my life before my life is the church,
What am I doing here?
What am I doing?
But honestly, all this was an elaborate like plan, essentially.
Yeah. I want to get to that because the way it is revealed,
yes,
is very well done. I don't want to get to that until like the point where we get to that because all of these things. I mean,
ideally, everyone still listening
time.
has seen the movie,
right?
But I know some people probably still haven't, so they're trying to experience it vicariously through us,
right? Especially for those people with the triggers that don't want to see. So I do want to, plus just talking about how it all unravels at the same time is really cool. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, they go out to the club. Well, the disco. It's technically the disco because of the time period. And Margaret has her first couple drinks, and they hang out with these two guys. What was the second guy's name? The guy that Margaret ends up hanging out with.
I don't remember, but I also don't know if it matters.
No, it does. Paulo.
That was it. Paulo.
Yeah, Paulo. So her and Paulo talk about things, and then they dance, and we get this really creepy shot of a spider on. So yeah, like they're dancing, and then it blacks out, and then we get this really creepy shot of a spider on an eyelash, and it's.
Yeah, like I didn't like it. It was even one of those cute jumpy spiders, but I didn't care. Get it off my eyelash, you know. But you know, the night's over. The one thing that is weird is she gets up and you can see a giant sweat stain when she got up, but you can assume it's just sweat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and who knows? That could have been what it was.
That's probably what it was.
And. You know, she gets up and she's like, and Luz is like, oh, wow. Have you never gotten drunk like that before? Haha. Like playing it off really well.
Yeah.
Playing it off.
I mean,
I know I'm kind of giving away that there's more to this night, but I think we already kind of suggested that there was more to this night.
Anyway, she's playing it off. And anyway, they get ready and they go to work at the orphanage. And this is where Margaret starts really connecting with Carlotta. Like she pulls her aside, or actually no, she goes up to a group of the girls and is like, "Where's sorry, not Carlotta, Carlita." She goes up to some of the girls and they're, you know, like, "Oh, hey, Sister Margaret." She's like, "Where's Carlita?" And they're like, "She's in the bad room."
Wow.
And this disturbs her. It's either in between this scene or like right before it or something. But she's having kind of a bad day. She has a hell of a hangover. And so she goes and like, you know, just takes a seat by this like monument in Rome. And who walks up to her? But Father Brennan.
In a very similar fashion to how Father Brennan walked up to Ambassador Peck. Not Peck. Thorne. I called him Peck. It's Gregory Peck. Ambassador Thorne in the original movie. And basically just says, I don't have much time. There's something going on at that orphanage. It's bad. Meet me here at this address.
Yeah.
And it's literally the same kind of technique.
Yeah. And she
cool hat and all.
And she's just like, okay. Like, she's just like, what a fucking crazy guy. I'm not going to do that. But he does say, like, there's something bad going on with Carlita. Like, there's bad things happening around her. And so Sister Margaret decides to search out Carlita, and she goes to the bad room, and she goes and sees her and, you know, brings her out and talks to her, and she's like, hey, I used to be a bad kid too. Like,
she's talking to Catalina and she starts hearing the screaming.
Yeah.
So she runs off to go check on it. And here we get the most fucking buck wild, disgusting thing I've ever seen.
This is the scene that's apparently less than 13 seconds, which felt like an eternity. So Jesus.
And so we see a white sterile room, and there's a pregnant woman presumably giving birth on the table. And there's something off about it from the beginning, from her pleas, and they gas her up.
They use laughing gas.
Use laughing gas, and when she starts scream laughing, it is so horrific.
Yeah,
and you kind of keep getting these little glimpses
of what's happening
down there.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, okay, we're just going to get little glimpses
right,
of this.
This is the implied horror I was talking about. Like, this is where I was like, this is just implied. Like, this is all we're going to get. And then
And then you see from a profile something starting to come out of down there.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, oh, it's a little closer than I thought.
Yeah.
And then this fucking disgusting arm shoots out, and you just get full view of a like demonic arm coming out of her cooch.
You know what? It's like, what?
And we both just in the theater went, oh, like
it's so startling because you're not expecting it. Like the implied horror of like the profile and just like kind of glimpses. Like that's what a normal horror movie would do.
I'm like, oh, we're gonna get some little hints that this is not a human being born. This is something different. And
just like I wanted to do, Margaret passes the fuck out.
She passes out. And there's people behind us in the theater, and I just hear this girl go, "That's not how it's supposed to work." And honestly, that was the tension break I needed, and I'm very grateful to whoever you were in our theater for doing that, because, oh my God, it was so shocking, upsetting, and just playing out disgusting.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not the last detailed birth we have to witness in this.
Right.
But it is definitely... They're both actually unsettling in their own ways.
Yeah.
This one's unsettling in a creature feature way. The other one's more in a kind of real way.
Yeah, this is unsettling in the creature feature kind of way. Later is where the trigger warning really is important.
Because this one was definitely more body horror.
Yeah, and honestly, in the glimpses we get in the cold open, that's also a trigger warning because that really fucked me up too.
Yes. So she goes to see, she passes out and they're like, oh, the miracle of life is hard to watch.
Yeah, I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often, which we forgot to mention here, the guy in charge is Cardinal Lawrence, played by Bill Nighy. And if you're like me and you've watched Emma 2020, or you're a regular person and you've watched Love Actually, you're like, what the hell is Bill Nighy doing in a horror movie? Because this man is like he's mostly in comedies. I don't know what he was doing here. He gave me a false sense of security. Like I was like, oh, did they turn the Omen into a horror comedy all of a sudden? Exactly. Because like maybe that's why they casted him. Like maybe that's part of it. He lures you into a false sense of security because a lot of these people, they're not recognizable. Like these are not a lot of actors that you know, but Bill Nighy specifically is someone and you know him for being funny. He's a funny guy. And you're just like, it just lures you into a false sense of security and you trust him. That's the real thing. Yeah. Because he's Bill Nighy. He's like got that warm disposition, He's like the only one. And it's weird because Bill Nighy, honestly, I don't know him for his warm disposition either. Like he's always had like kind of a cold, like, oh, chip on your shoulder British guy kind of vibe, and has always been like the guy who does the dark horror or the dark comedy, the darker things in the comedy stuff, so I guess maybe I should have seen him in a horror movie more. But it's so weird, but he was like the bright, warm center of this, and I trusted him,
I didn't.
I trusted him because he's Bill Nighy.
But
British people probably get it.
But she decides, yeah, maybe I will go meet him at this address.
Yeah.
At least hear what he has to say. And this is where we get kind of a lore change.
Mm-hmm.
In the original, I guess it only does say that Damien was born of a jackal.
No.
It does say his mother was a jackal.
It does. Because that's the thing I was confused about. If you listen to the Omen episode from last week, I literally said, I don't get it. What were you talking about? His mother was a jack? His mother was a what?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
But if you think about it, well, we'll get there.
So the change here is apparently, I'm curious what you were going to say. So please interject whenever you were going to say what you were going to say. The change here is now apparently so the plot, like not the plot of the movie, but the plot that these people have is that this is a radical sect of the Catholic Church who is seeing more and more people slip away from God. And their solution is to bring the birth of the Antichrist to bring about events that would unequivocally bring people back to God.
Yeah, but
apparently now what it is the jackal is the father.
The scenes where this stuff is revealed is like so expertly done.
Yes.
So I'd like to get to those scenes.
This is the scene.
No, it's not.
He says this stuff.
Not here. She doesn't go back. Listen. Okay. So what happens next is she wakes up from being unconscious.
Yeah.
And she goes down to where all the that's where the nun is smoking a cigarette and jumping on a trampoline. Everyone's partying. And she goes and immediately finds Carlita. And Carlita is talking to his sister Angelica. And she's like, oh, what are you guys doing? And they hand her this drawing of literally what she just saw. And it freaks her out. And she says, Sister Angelica, like, this is not appropriate. You shouldn't be doing that. And Angelica seems mad and walks away. And she goes to turn and talk to Carlita. And Angelica comes back behind her and she's like, what the? And Sister Angelica just like makes out with her. It's kind of really weird and uncomfortable. And even in context, it does not make sense, but that's okay. Cause after that, Margaret also just goes, what? And then moves on. I think
it's supposed to be like Sister Angelica doing it weird stuff again.
Yeah, she's assuming that Sister Angelica, like I have been assuming this whole movie, is not all there. She's not mentally,
Yeah.
And so she just kind of moves on. Like she's like, okay, that's whatever. And so she sits down to talk to Carlita, and then some of the kids invite them to play their game.
Kind of look like Ring Around the Rosie.
Yeah. And we see Sister Angelica with her hair is wet and she's like covered in something, and the game ends and all the kids are on the ground. She says the same exact thing.
She says, it's all for you.
Yes, that's what it is.
Which she says, you could call a fun, cool callback or kind of corny callback.
I thought it was a great
I thought it was a great callback because I think it's just the same force that overcomes
yes. She says,
the nanny.
It's all for you. And instead of just hanging herself, which is what I thought was going to happen, I then realized, because we get a like wide shot of her standing at a very tall point in the building, and we can see her and everyone's kind of backing up. And in this wide shot, you can see she has a lighter in her hand. I'm like, wet hair covered in something, lighter. Oh shit, she's gonna set herself on fire.
Yep, we get a nice little self-immolation combined with hanging. It's shot very similarly
because the window breaks exactly the same. Like it's a really great way to call back to the original movie, because what it does is it changes the circumstance kind of by adding that element of fire, but also does like direct shots that seem exactly the same. It would be great if the Queen would just play. It would be really funny. But not really.
Unfortunately, we are in Rome.
But yeah, so she hung herself and burned herself, and everyone runs away, and Margaret's like, oh, something's wrong here. So she goes to that address that Father Brennan gave her.
I had forgotten that this happened before this, not after this.
Yeah. This is what brings her to that. And honestly, like, I'm realizing the pacing of this movie. Like, this is over like a period of days. Because that stuff, that whole timeline that we just went through, from her waking up and being hungover to seeing the jackal thing to seeing the suicide, that's one day. This has been a singular day.
Damn, what a tough day.
Jesus. But yeah, she goes to see Father Brennan, and he explains to her the plot that is going on in this church.
Which, should I say it again, or did we already kind of covered it?
I mean, up to you.
So yeah, essentially, they're trying to make the Antichrist. Mm-hmm. They keep fucking it up, but they're trying to make the Antichrist.
Right.
What they have gathered so far is that, so basically they have the jackal, the idea of the jackal, which you could say is just the thing that's confusing about this to me is the jackal. Is it the devil? Because I don't think it is.
I can't tell.
How is it the son of the devil is my question.
Because she, I don't know.
That's where my kind of confusion kind of sets in. I guess because they make the claim that they can only make, because they're trying to make a boy, but they've only been able to make girls so far, and basically they've come to the conclusion that they need it to impregnate its own offspring, is how they put it, and that's how they put it.
It's so gross.
So now he wants her to find proof, like files on Catalina, because Catalina is presumptively this child, the future mother of the Antichrist. Mm-hmm. Which is horrific because she's a child.
Yeah.
And he warns her that it's coming up June 6th at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Which we're only given that it's coming up. We don't know how soon it's coming up.
Yeah.
So it does leave you kind of in this space where you don't know how close you are to the event happening, everything going to shit. But you get the kind of the vibe that she only partially buys into this and thinks it's kind of insane, but she still is going to try and get to the bottom of it to the best of her ability, and just because of how much she cares about Catalina and making sure she's okay.
Yeah.
But she's told, all the confirmation you'll need, you have to just find the mark of the beast on her body, mm-hmm. which is the 666 I call it a tattoo because it looks like a tattoo in most cases.
In
but
the original, but this is very obviously
fleshy.
like fleshy. Yeah, it's different.
And we'll get there, but it's so well done in this movie.
It's so well done.
Stay close, stranger. The room awaits you after these messages.
But
yeah, so we get the sense, okay, so this is the plot. And it's I kind of love it. I kind of love how they did that, because what I was expecting was like, oh, it's just a literal like sect of Satan worshipers that are hidden within the church. That's what I thought it was going to be. Like, it wasn't going to be anything based in actual Catholicism or in a fear of religion like going away. I thought it was just going to be like, oh, like there's Satanists and they hide in the church because that's a really easy place to hide, and it's also a common like thing.
Trope.
It's a common trope, and it's a common thing in like real life. Because there's I forget where it is. It's somewhere in England, I'm pretty sure, where there was this huge Satanist cult with all these caves, and the place where they would actually like
Hellfire Club.
Yes, Hellfire Club. The place where they would actually do the rituals was literally right under the church, because it was heaven and hell. So it's actually like a thing.
Yeah, and there's kind of a Hellfire Club vibe, but they are not. At least they don't view themselves as Satanists.
They view themselves as Catholics.
I think they are just misled to the point of it. If that makes sense.
What I love about it is it points out the some of the issues that I find nowadays with not Catholicism, but like with religion in general, where people get so caught up in their religion or whatever rules are in whatever book of the Bible, even if it's not, something that's relevant anymore, or
Revelations.
Not even just that, like, and misinterpret parts of the Bible and impose those views onto other people who do not believe them, and feel themselves to be holier than thou. They have that holier than thou thing going on. And what I like about this twist, using the Omen and like that story and making this twist on it, it's a comment on these people, on how they are being misled, because the original like intent of most religions is basically, here's a set of rules so you can be a good person. And, just try to be a good person, where like people take it too far, and they're taking it too far. They've got that holier than thou mentality. And I like the idea that Satan supposedly would use that and twist that and make people think the only way to spread the message, or the only way to keep their religion above other religions,
is to bring this forth,
is to birth the Antichrist, is to follow Satan. And it's so deep.
It is. It's really cool. It's really, and it feels kind of like, if this were going to play out, this is how it would play out, if that makes any sense. And it's horrific, because it really just feels like, here's this, what should be a safe space, that is completely the opposite. It is the den of lions. It is the like most evil place on earth at this point.
Right.
Yet they believe they're doing God's work, which, it's incredible how you can get to that how much you can stoop to even get to believing that.
Right.
But at the same time, you can see it. You know what I mean?
Right.
You could see, because drastic measures get taken in all like walks of life. Why not in this case?
Right.
You know? And it really does, like I said, this stuff really does sculpt out the world building of the Omen's version of Revelations, because it essentially is a telling. The entire franchise essentially is a telling of the Book of Revelations from a kind of modern lens, you know?
Yeah.
And weirdly enough, the movie is taken so seriously these days that a lot of people who predict how the end will go pretty much just predict the way these movies play out. like the Antichrist is going to be our president. Like it's like and it's the current president that's there. That's how it always is.
Yeah.
Damien Thorne is essentially that person, and it is informed so much of how pop culture views the Christian depiction of the end of the world.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of interesting to see it essentially being a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
Because that's essentially now what it has become. It's gone from prophecy to self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right.
They induced it.
Yeah.
Which is insane. But then you can argue, is it self-fulfilling to begin with? Was it always going to go this way? Was this always how it was going to happen?
Right.
Where were we in the movie?
So we had just what?
Some more kind of stuff happens.
Yeah.
I know I think the next thing we see is the art museum.
Yes. So they get on a bus, and this is what he had to pee real quick. So this is what he missed in the couple, like maybe it felt like I blinked and you were back, but
I went really fast.
They're on this bus, and she hops over to this father who is at the same place she is, and she says like, hey, like, what do you know about Carlita? Like, where is she from? You know, like, when was she born? All these questions. And he's like, you are asking the wrong person. I don't freaking know. And she says, do you know where I can find that information? And he goes, and you can see his gaze shift, and the like head sister is staring at them. And so she immediately just moves on and goes up to Carlotta, and they go into the art museum, and, you know, she kind of pulls her away from everybody else. And I love this moment. It's great. She's like, hey, like, I'm not trying to scare you. You know, you can trust me. Like, are you being like hurt in any kind of way? Or are they doing something to you that's making you feel uncomfortable, or you think it's bad? And I was like, yes, mama. Yes, queen. Thank you. This is exactly the right way to approach this. Because what she's hearing, besides all the devilly stuff, I still don't think she fully believes in that yet.
I think all she knows for sure is something's happening to this child.
Something is happening to this child here. She's getting suggestions that it might be.
She's caught glimpses of her tied to her bed.
Yes. And that it might be like a sexual thing. So she's approaching this situation as if she's approaching a child who's being touched inappropriately. And she kills it. She does such a good job of having this conversation. So thank you to this movie for this conversation. It's great. Until it freaks Carlotta out too much.
And she runs away.
Yes, because Margaret asks, like, hey, how do you know the things you're seeing are real? Because I used to see things as a child when I was a kid. I used to be the same way, but I learned what I was seeing wasn't real. and I was able to get through it. And that is what that's what like breaks Carlita, and she runs away. Margaret goes running after her, and she finds her sitting there, and she's like, "Hey, Carlita," and then she sees this hand
go across her
back. It's so creepy. And we should mention this is the exact same way she found Carlita earlier, before the suicide, at that little like party kind of thing going on. Is she saw Carlita, and then she saw Sister Angelica in her hand and rubbing her back. And it's kind of a recurring theme with Angelica, like earlier when she's trying to find Carlita or something. I don't really remember how it happened, but we see just a hand appear in a doorway, and then we see Angelica peek around the corner.
And she's giggling.
Giggling, and her hand just kind of appearing out of nowhere is a thing.
It's very creepy every time. It's one of my, in a horror movie, one of my top like scariest shots is no music, no sting, just like a hand coming around a doorway.
Yeah.
Or all around a shoulder. That stuff's always freaky.
So she's like, "Oh," and she walks up to her, and then she hears the giggling, and she sees that it's Sister Angelica, but Sister
already turned around staring at her,
yes,
giggling, and it's so creepy.
It's creepy because she's dead.
Yeah, she's dead. I don't know if y'all missed that bit, but she's dead.
And then
I almost missed that bit.
But someone runs in and is like, "There's a riot starting," and she turns her head for a second, turns back, and
she's gone.
Bye. And Carlita is, getting up and running out of the museum, and they're all trying to run away. This riot's happening. Low-key a respectful riot. Like, pretty low-key. Like, literally the rioters are, like, yelling and screaming and whatever. You can see the two rioters who are, like, right by where all the kids are running out of the building. While they're like yelling and like participating, they're also like guiding the kids to go all the same direction. Because
I thought that was a nice little touch.
I thought that was a nice touch. I thought it was like very clear, like they're not for, all these religious symbols or whatever, but they're not going to hurt any kids.
They do drag Margaret away.
Yeah.
She does get sucked into the mob essentially.
Right.
And I don't know. And then basically, while this is happening, I assume it's a hallucination.
Yes, I believe it is, because we see from the head sister's perspective what is happening, like what's happening with Margaret after we see this jackal hand.
The jackal hand just kind of wraps around her face and her chest.
Yeah.
That was a bit awkward. That's the theme of this movie.
That's the theme.
And we get this awesome shot back of just her alone in this like smoky street, like still flailing a bit and freaking out, because that's what everyone else is seeing, is that she's. But I think the sisters know that what they see is not what she sees.
Mm-hmm.
But, and then this leads into the vows, right?
Yeah. So initially, so she gets.
Oh wait, they ban her from seeing Catalina. Essentially,
yeah. They tell her she's no longer going to be taking her vows, because they think she's ill, and
yes, they're telling her that she's ill.
Yeah, basically. And they're not going to let her see Carlita anymore, because obviously, like, she's not a good influence on her because she's seeing things and stuff. And Margaret's like, no. This isn't fair. I'm not sick. Like, it's whatever. And she leaves. And then we get into where the vows and stuff start happening.
We see, here's the thing that was so striking to me,
Mhm.
because Margaret, during the vows for Luz, this is where has the opening to go look for the files, essentially.
Yeah.
Luz's face during the entire vows portion was cluing me in to her not being quite the person that she showed she was.
She wasn't into it. She definitely didn't want to do it.
But she definitely was a willing participant, if that makes sense. Because there's a hint of, she looks emotionally dead, but there's also a hint of contentness, if that makes sense. A slight smirk throughout the entire thing.
I guess, yeah.
So she's taking her vows while we go into the nun dungeon, as I will call it. She finds the key, and there's just a small keyhole in this tapestry or painting behind the head nun's office. And it leads into this basically cave dungeon thing. It does really remind me of the Hellfire Caves. And then we find a filing cabinet in this dungeon, and
Yeah.
I couldn't help but find it a little funny.
It's a little bit silly.
It's a little silly, but it's just an old classic filing cabinet. What's in the filing cabinet is not as silly.
No.
She finds the record for
Basically,
what
the
are they
whole
called?
experiment. It's
Scareen, something like that. They're all named Scareen or something along those lines.
I'm finding Skyana.
They're all called Skyana.
Yeah.
There's Skyana, I think it was 14
Yes.
was Catalina.
Mhm.
She finds her records, and she's kind of skimming through all the others, and you see all these deformed children, all of them stillborn, deceased, all of them not viable.
And this is why this is one of the many reasons we're coming up on where a lot of the triggering stuff is coming in.
Yes.
So these images and what's to come here in a minute are really why I felt the need to put that trigger warning in, because if you've got pregnancy trauma, this is not for you.
She scoops up all the files.
Yes.
And runs for the hills.
Here's where I don't understand her reasoning here quite so much. I don't know if she thinks it's going to happen. Well, she must know the date. The
date's coming up.
The date is tonight. So that's why she grabs Carlita, because she's basically making a run for it, and she grabs Carlita. And if she didn't try to grab Carlita, she could have gotten out.
But she does try to go for Carlita. It does draw attention.
Yes.
And she essentially ends up cornered in a room. She tries to block the door, but it's not going to do much. So she decides, I'm going to take a piece of the bed to defend myself, but also hide the files under it.
Yeah.
But this is where we get that really good reveal. They barge in and grab everybody, and you see Carlita screams, and you see the 666 is at the roof of her mouth.
Yeah.
And I was like, ooh. That's a cool place to put it.
It was a really good way to confirm what was going on without having to be extremely obvious about it, because it does zoom in on it, but it could be a blink and you miss it moment.
Yeah.
For real.
And so Carlita is dragged off to who knows where. And Sister Margaret, she's put in the bad room.
Yeah.
And this whole little sequence here was so freaky.
Yeah.
It's just dark, and you start hearing like voices. She's hearing voices. And then we kind of get a lingering shot on something is in the corner of the room.
Yeah.
And you just hear like that giggling start.
Giggle, and you're like, oh.
And I love the way that they do this. I don't love the way they ended it, but I love the way they did this.
Mm-hmm.
You start like it simulates your eyes adjusting.
Yeah, because it's so dark and you can't see anything at first.
And you see this figure stand up and just start slowly walking towards her.
Right.
And it is the burnt to a crisp version of Angelica.
Yeah.
And she's just giggling. She has no lips left. She's just but her teeth are chittering and chattering as she giggles. Ugh. And unfortunately, they ended it with a jump scare. They had her like lean forward and go, ha! Like, yeah,
I was like, I kind of wish they didn't do that. That felt
There's
cheap.
A couple moments like that in this movie. There are a couple just cheap jump scares.
Yeah.
But I can usually look past them.
Yeah.
In most movies. They're an annoyance.
Yeah.
They don't really hurt a movie too much for me.
Yeah.
Unless they're just borderline obnoxious Exorcist flavor. But and then that one, I imagine it was the same guy.
Yes, it's the guy from
that
the
I missed
bus.
when I was peeing.
Yes. He opens the door like right when this jump scare happens, and Margaret's screaming and freaking out, and he's like, hey, it's okay. I have the files. We gotta go. And that's actually a really good way to just get someone to move on from being scared.
Yeah.
Is to just be like,
we gotta go.
Like, hey, it's okay. Let's go. We're leaving right now. Let's go. Like,
but he takes her back to Father Brennan's little bachelor pad.
And that's where we learned that Father Brennan had also approached him.
Yes. And we got our first bunch of exposition from Father Brennan. Mm-hmm. Now they put together the missing pieces.
Yeah.
And this is where I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah, I had put it kind of together already at this point.
I didn't. I still was very focused on Carlita.
Yeah, I had already been like,
But
interesting.
So as they're looking at the files, they notice, wait a minute, let me see the picture of that baby that you had. Because they had a picture of what they thought was Carlita being held by the nuns. And they notice that the mark is on that baby's forehead.
Yeah, and they can see it there. It's not. She goes, well, that's not where Carlita's mark is. It's in her mouth. And so they go searching through the rest of the files to try to find, who this baby might be. And Margaret picks up a file and it doesn't have a picture in it. And she looks and it says healthy and female. And she picks up the photo that Father Brennan had that he was given to by the father in the beginning of the movie. And she looks at the back of it, and we did notice throughout the film, it did have like a ripped piece of paper, like it had been ripped off of something. And she puts it onto the file and she's like, oh my God. And she kind of like looks at the dates and stuff on it. And then she kind of just like sits up and starts feeling her head. And she gets all these flashbacks all of a sudden.
And we get this shot of her now in her going out top, essentially, back to that night.
Yeah.
Like staring up at the camera, just smiling.
Yeah. And it turns into the shot of her just like floating through a dark hallway, like laying back.
And you can presume that was her essentially on a gurney.
Yeah.
Headed to trigger warning. This is where it gets bad.
This is where it gets bad. Yeah.
Essentially, we miss this bit.
Oh,
Paulo, earlier in the film,
Yeah.
she runs into Paulo on the street. He's terrified of seeing her.
Yeah.
He implies, he says, I didn't, like, he's like, check for the mark. He points
starts
to the
pointing
forehead.
at his head, and then the car hits him, and he ends up dead. That was earlier in the movie.
And I still assumed he was talking about Carlita when he was saying that.
Yeah, I still hadn't put together. I just thought he was like mumbling nonsense.
I
to
was like,
himself.
okay, so he found out something. That's
Yeah.
all I thought.
That's all I thought too.
But he got hit by the car. She tried to get him out, which is never a bad idea, never a good idea. She picks up just his torso.
Yeah, it's so scary.
It's so scary and it's so gnarly. So that's important. We both kind of forgot that bit, but it is important.
Yeah.
So we see that. And the thing is, like, when that scene originally happened, I was so relieved that she wasn't drugged or something terrible happened, because that was the thing I was worried about the entire scene, because I already had an impression of what this movie was willing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh no. And I was like, and I felt so good. I was like, oh, Paulo seemed like he was a nice guy. No,
she was in fact drugged.
He played his part and helped get her to where she was going to go. And it's very uncomfortable. It's very gruesome. I'm glad they didn't go as far as I was afraid they were going to. The situation itself was enough.
Mm-hmm.
Glimpses of what was going to happen was enough. You know, they cover her face and you just see through the veil that's over her face something coming over her to do you know what. And it's very uncomfortable. I don't want to focus too much on it, but she's pregnant is the takeaway. So it was not Carlita all along. It was her.
Mm-hmm.
She was the one that they brought her here so that she could give birth to the Antichrist. And
as she's remembering that in real time, she's like screaming and freaking out. And, you know, the guys calm her down, and Father Brennan goes through her hair and he finds the mark on her head, which is why he knew the mark could be under the hair.
Mm-hmm.
In
a nice little
the
detail.
Omen. Very good detail. We noticed.
And this does give more credence to why they would know so much about how devil offspring works.
Right.
Because like he's just like, it could be anywhere. You could look under the hair, you know, like
right.
he's been through it. But the one thing is, I don't know how all of this guilt came from. Father Brendan seemed a lot more implicated in the original in this plot, but he's clearly still working against it as it's happening. I think maybe it's just pure guilt.
I think
it's pure I didn't do enough. And maybe early on he was a part of it, and that's how he even knows so much.
Yeah.
And that was even enough for him to beg for forgiveness, essentially, and try to correct it.
Yeah.
We don't really get an answer.
No.
But now she's, you know, she comes back to her senses a bit, and she's like, we have to go get Carlita.
Yeah.
We have to. Like, she's in danger. We have to go save her.
Yeah.
She doesn't get that chance.
No.
As they're driving back to go do whatever they can do, they get T-boned by another car.
Before they go to get Carlita, she's like, I can't. They're like, we don't have time to go get Carlita. Like, we don't have time for this. And she's like, well, I can't. Like, she's like, we got to get rid of it then.
So they're going to go get an abortion.
Yes.
Essentially.
Because she says, you know, this doctor's safe, you know.
And because, he's like, it's June 6th. Like, it's happening tonight. We have to do something about it. And unfortunately, they don't get that far.
No.
They get T-boned by another car. I'm not sure if they got T-boned by people operating it, like, from that sect, or if it was an Omen-like coincidence.
Like the coincidence
original
thing, yeah.
Stay close, stranger. The room awaits you after these messages.
But she gets out of the car and she acts her fucking ass off.
It's
right here.
It's amazing. And it's so unsettling.
I was almost waiting. I was kind of like, because I was like, oh, is the mom jackal thing going to pay off? It was almost like she was transforming.
Yes. That's
what I thought was going to happen.
I thought she was going to turn into a jackal.
I was like, I'm not, depending on how the effect looks, I don't know how I feel about it.
Right.
But no, she's just fucking seizing out like that, essentially. Yeah. And she both comes to term and water breaks all in like the span of 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's really freaky.
You see her stomach just grow out and the water. It's so gross.
It's disgusting.
It's so horrific.
Yeah.
But and then you just see two black cloaks walk up to her as she's on the ground, like, and oh, she's captured.
Like you're like, oh god, she's fucked.
And she starts waking up, and all you need to see is the stone, the brimstone, and candled chandeliers above her head to know where she is.
Yeah.
She's in that dungeon. And this is like, at first I thought I was going to be grateful that it was a C-section. Nope. It made it worse. I think it might have made it worse.
They showed the whole thing.
That's the That's the thing. I was thinking that, okay, C-section. I don't know why I was thinking they wouldn't show us everything.
We're like, you were thinking, oh, thank God I don't actually have to see a birth. Nope. No, we get to see the whole thing. And
the worst part is that she is conscious and completely aware, and she's like surrounded by every nun in the school, including priest, including Luz, and they're all just watching this happen, and she's just has like soft pleas, like please, just stop, like, and it's so upsetting.
She gives up on just stop. She starts saying, just please untie me, it hurts.
Like, and they pull out I'm not going to go so far into detail. The child is removed in excruciating detail. There are two of them, which I was not expecting.
I was not ready for that.
One boy, and they all cheer, and the original theme from the Omen kicks in, and holy shit, I forgot how scary this song is when and that was when I remembered, oh yeah, this is the Omen. And Damien is born, black hair, it's him. And she has an idea. She says, "Can I hold him?" And I can't believe they bought it. That's the weird thing. I can't believe they bought it.
I think really what they were thinking, they're overjoyed to see a boy, and evidently the people who have been involved in this in the past have just become a part of it in the end, because what we find out in this second where she gets to hold the child is that the head sister is like, I'm so proud of you, my child. So the head sister is her mother.
What a messed up family, right?
It just sends chills down your spine. And I think what they're thinking is, oh, she's like elated, like she's like us now. because that's what they're used to.
Yeah, I guess so.
And they're also thinking her bottom half is drugged up. She is not like screaming in pain. So they obviously gave her like a local anesthetic.
Yeah.
So they're thinking, oh, her bottom half it's immobile right now. So like it's not like she can do anything. Evidently that's not true. But.
No, because she takes a scalpel and stabs the cardinal right in the throat.
Yeah. It's gruesome, but everything else has been so terrible so far. It feels relieving.
Oh yeah, seeing at least one of them bite it.
Yeah.
Was what I wanted. Like
Yeah.
one of them had to die.
Yeah.
At least. Like that's the only reprieve you get.
Yes.
Because they do they are trying to wrestle the baby out of her arm, and then Luz comes over and stabs her.
Yeah.
And that's why I say that she definitely seemed like a willing participant, because she smiled after she did it.
Oh yeah, she definitely did.
And I thought that was it. I thought she was dead.
Yeah.
But they take Damien. They didn't go too hard on it. It leads right up to the beginning of the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
They have the baby in the car. They have a picture of Gregory Peck, who's, Ambassador Thorne is like, this is the U.S. ambassador to Rome. He's having a child. We're going to, they just explain the plan. We're going to swap the kids. They're going to have a horrible accident. That's how they put it.
Yeah.
You will offer this child, he will grow up with his privileges, and they explain the whole plot of the Omen, except the whole plan. And you see that there's nothing you can do because it goes through.
Yeah.
Whether Damien is successful in his ventures, you'll have to watch Damien Omen 2 and the Omen 3, The Final Conflict. They're not that great of movies. They're not. Actually, I have a soft spot for them, but to find out. But essentially, we then cut back to they left the baby girl there as well.
Mm-hmm.
They said, burn everything, leave them both to die.
Yeah.
Which.
And when they say that, we see a little hand come around a door frame and who comes peeking around the door frame but Carlita. So she knows they're going to burn it down. So she goes she goes into the room and helps baby girl and Margaret and they all escape. And also, here's the thing. I think the fire is supposed to suggest that the reason all the records and stuff caught on fire was because of this fire, but it seems like the hospital was a completely different hospital.
I don't think so. I don't think you connect that.
And initially, like when they started that fire, I was like, oh, it's the fire. Like, oh.
Yeah, no, I think it's just a separate fire.
No, it's a separate fire. They just like arson.
Yeah, it's the perfect crime. So yeah, Carlita goes and she saves Margaret, but they turn around and the jackal's still down there.
Yeah.
And we get as good of a look as you're gonna get at it. It essentially looks like the skeleton they find, just with loose flesh on it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the skeleton they find in the original Omen.
Yeah.
Still, I guess you could just call it a retcon. That is not the mother.
Let's just give it a second and I'll give you why I think that it's not a retcon.
Okay. We'll get there when we're, I'm imagining, doing our ending thoughts. Right?
Yeah.
But they get out and we get a nice little epilogue.
Yeah.
We see the three of them living as like a happy family.
Yeah, like a little like trio of sisters.
Little trio of sisters.
They kind of are.
They are sisters of Satan.
Ugh.
They're all Satan's kids.
Yeah.
They're not supposed to be here. There's only supposed to be one of them.
Yeah.
I know there's a fourth Omen movie with a girl as the Antichrist. I don't know if any of those, if that, like, the youngest is supposed to be her. I don't think so, though. I think that's just me not having seen it and not know, because a lot of people disown that movie as part of the franchise. It went straight to DVD.
So maybe it's just not.
It's just, you know, a loose end that they could maybe explore one day.
Yeah.
Maybe. I personally think prequels shouldn't get a sequel.
So,
but
so we get a little glimpse, and they hear something outside, and we see Father Brennan coming up to the door, and Margaret walks up behind him with a giant ass shotgun, and he's like, "Hey, I just wanted to like warn you. They know where you are." And, you know, Damien, they named your child. His name is Damien. As if we didn't know. No, like the music, there's like a sting here. Yeah. The music picks up.
It was a
like,
Marvelism.
They named your child Damien. I was like, oh yeah, thanks for pointing out that is the kid from the Omen. We weren't sure yet.
And then it cut to credits. And then, shall we?
Yeah.
Leave
So what I kind of think is fun here, and what they're definitely doing is they're leaving the prequel open for a sequel,
which I wouldn't hate.
Given how this went, I also wouldn't hate it.
Like, it does concern me, because at the same time I am like,
I think it'd be their own separate, like, little journey, like escaping the.
Well, and you could also
sect.
explore you could probably explore other periods in Damien's life as well.
I guess.
Because the thing is, I guess it might, if you did like a smaller story of them like on the run from these Catholic Satan people, essentially, like that could make a good movie. But I guess it's more like I'd have to see what they did with it. Yeah.
As for the mother being a jackal thing, my thought is, nowhere does anybody involved with the actual sect say that. They bury the jackal in Margaret's grave, but they don't have Margaret to bury in a grave. So that explains why the sect buried the jackal there. Why I think Father Brennan said the mother was a jackal is because he's trying to conceal where Margaret is and what's going on with Margaret, because he's trying to protect her.
So it's still a retcon, though. Just because it still is a retcon in that regard. It might not be. It's still taking the original intent of the movie and changing it.
I guess so. Yeah.
You could I don't think you can argue that when the original was made that was how it panned out.
That's
I think
fair.
it was pretty cut and dry. This human child came out of this jackal.
Right.
But I guess they kind of did some thinking, and they probably were like, that makes no sense.
Yeah. Like,
this at least makes a little more sense.
Right.
It is storming hard outside, out of nowhere, by the way.
Oh my goodness.
My windows were rolled up, right?
Yeah. I made you roll them up at the movie theater.
That's true.
Shit.
But what was I saying?
We're
really bummed because we were gonna go sit out on a patio and have drinks after this, and now we probably can't do that.
Yeah, evidently not.
We probably can't even leave Austin's house yet until it's a little calmed down. It's crazy out there out of nowhere.
I have an umbrella.
Ah, on you? Oh my god! Wow,
it's a gay umbrella. I just pulled it out of my backpack. I just want to explain, because this is an audio format, not a video format. It is a rainbow umbrella that I just pulled out of my backpack and surprised James with. So that's the fun thing of this.
This episode. Is convenient. I actually really liked this movie.
Despite the trauma, I really liked this movie as well.
It was very it was horror.
That's for sure.
And I think that's the thing. Me and you haven't been scared by a movie in a minute.
Because here's the thing, like, it's definitely like religion horror, like religious horror. But also mixed with a psychological horror aspect?
I think all religious horror should be psychological horror, personally, because honestly, I don't think in this day and age you can get by on the devil's scary, isn't he?
Yeah,
Like,
that's true.
we're overexposed to that. When
A lot of us
you have to really show
have watched Supernatural and we sympathize.
you have to really show why the devil is scary.
Mhm.
You can't just be like, ooh, scary face, and they say, I'm evil, I'm gonna drag you to hell. Like, that's not
Yeah.
scary anymore.
No.
What's scary is like the idea of there is just this pure evil. What really, like, what evil actually means. Because in movies, evil is cheap,
Mhm.
is very cheapened. You know,
Mhm.
it's just, absence of morals. But evil should be the opposite of morals, if that makes sense. The perverse, the disgusting. Like, this movie shows evil in like working in the shadows, essentially. You get a peek behind the curtain
Mhm.
of what evil can be.
Mhm.
And you don't even have to like see it from a Christian perspective or a Catholic perspective, or to see that what is going on in this movie makes you uncomfortable because it is evil.
And this is a little bit personal, so but it preys on the exact fears that I have, like exact fears with the SA, with birth. Like, that is like, it was really freaky to me because these are like the exact things that are the most scary to me. That's why I got so locked up. Like, you remember, like,
Yeah.
I literally
I
were
wasn't
like,
sure if I should get closer or just like pat you on the back and hope that was enough.
I was like, I had gone from like being in like a curled up kind of, we did the thing where you lift the middle, like,
The middle
cup
arm.
holder arm thing, and then like lay down and kind of cuddle a little bit, and then I immediately sat up. My feet were like, my knees were on my chest, my feet were in front of like the screen. I kind of like, I don't even know, I like put my arms like this, I feel like, and I just like didn't, I was freaking out. I was completely freaking out, but I couldn't like stop watching. Because if I stopped watching, then I wouldn't see the danger, and like it was a complete like actual physical what's the right term?
Reaction?
Well, reaction, but like a kind of reaction. Like that you can't
Impulse?
control. Like, I guess impulse isn't the right word. I don't know, but it was not something I could control. I just like I fully freaked out, fully got defensive, started blocking off. It's scary. And it was like perfectly pinpointed scary for me. So psychological horrors have not been a win with me yet. This one was. I would prefer some more catharsis so it didn't leave me like still kind of freaking out. But
Most of the people involved die in the first Omen movie. The original Omen movie, I mean.
the devil doesn't though, so
Yeah, I don't think you're getting revenge on the devil,
oh no, I'm not.
unfortunately.
I know I'm not. And it's part of like, that's why I think the trigger warning is important here. I do think that in the description for the movie, or, like before you buy tickets, I'm not saying like that the movie should have, when you walk into the theater, like a viewer discretion is advised or something.
Because the thing is, and maybe it's something we should look at more often, no one really looks at the box. When you see a trailer, you see a movie, and it has the band before, with the MPA rating
Yeah.
and the contents of the film.
Yeah. No one looks at that.
No one looks at it. We didn't.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to what it says.
Yeah. There should be a little bit of a trigger warning. And I guess maybe the argument to that is people who are probably a little more affected than I am on these topics actually look for the trigger warning or look at that box, but I mean, it would be helpful because this movie could be very damaging to some people. I know I'm not going to sleep well tonight after watching it. That's for certain. But like, especially because I'm imagining someone who's gone through a miscarriage or a traumatic birth have like sitting to watch a horror movie because, you know, life goes on after that, and coming upon these scenes, and just like us, like we didn't expect anything to be this graphic. I mean,
for reference, the MPAA said violent content, grisly and disturbing images, brief graphic nudity.
So that not gonna warn somebody who has the same triggers as me.
Yes, it's not.
It's not. It needs a.
I don't think the MPAA ever explicitly will say SA content involved.
I feel like I've seen it.
I haven't. Then again, I haven't watched a lot of movies with it, if that makes sense.
Maybe it's Netflix. I think Netflix
does.
Netflix puts that trigger warning on. It's not even a trigger warning. It puts the content like right before you start watching. Like I watch a lot of Outlander. The parts that are triggering in that for me have catharsis, so that's helpful. It does. It shows a little thing and it will say sexual assault content and stuff. So anyway, the movie should have in its description a small trigger warning for people who even SA, like I guess SA happens in a lot of movies, and I feel like a lot of people who are triggered by it, like me, try not to worry about it too much, and when it comes up, just kind of deal with the consequences. But as for people who have trauma relating to birth, I just feel like they deserve that content warning. I really do. Because that is the worst kind of trauma. I myself haven't experienced it, but I've listened to many stories of women who have, and it would not be fair to a woman who has that kind of trauma to go in to just see a movie and have to come out and deal with all those feelings again.
I'm struggling to find a rating system that would be fun for this movie.
You should probably end key. We've been sitting here in silence for like 5 minutes.
Wait, oh shit. Okay, that worked. Well,
jackals, I guess.
How many jackals out of 10? You know, fuck it. How many jackals out of 10?
Despite the trauma, I think this is a solid 9 jackals out of 10.
That's a pretty fair score. I'm similar, but I think I'm at an 8.5.
Okay.
9 is a very high ranking for me, and this movie, it is up there, but I don't think it's quite at a 9. But damn.
Yeah.
Oh, this was a tough one.
This is a
tough one, but it was also, I think, really good. Yeah. But no Q&A today, unfortunately.
Yeah, because we're a little out of order right now.
Yeah, so, but, you know, if you've heard some of our episodes before, you know our Q&As, they're really fun. You can go to discord.gg/Jumperscape if you want to get your own Q&As in there, or if you want to just chat with us about the episodes, about horror movies. If you've seen the first Omen, we'd like to, hear your take on it, hear your experience.
Yes, please share with us.
Yes. So yeah, discord.gg/Jumperscape. And if you like what we do and you want to support us, you can go to patreon.com/Jumperscape as well. We got plenty of cool people over there. People like Jacob Adlam. Shane, can you get that spider off the table? Also, salt on pancakes is actually good. The Library Cult of Lactation, number 69, aka Lactation. I'm so burnt out. It's Default 456, Dark Salad 42, Scion Esports, Cortana's OnlyFans manager, Dick Hammerbush, Halo the Guy, Help Eris trapped me in Shane's garage, Hounds of Meath, James, you're under arrest for several human rights violations and war crimes committed in Bosnia between 1992 through 1995. Okay. Lactating Gator, Mr. Shifter, James Zealot, Seth Rutherford, Spartan Dave, Cool Hammerbush, H Ghost, Kyle Hooley, Mo Maggot Yallen, Spartan Habuko G156, Vermin, Addy, Criminal, Connor Clark, Dylan, Lactating Milk MT, Perplexed Panic, a freaking Batman.
The freaking
my
Batman.
mistake. The Lactation of Mercy, Brendan Pfeiffer, Sky Cairo, Eliza, JX O'Malley, Keith G077, Oddball here, Tyson Rue 86. Can I read? No, that's 68. Aussie ODST, Connor, please unite me from. Please untie me from your bedroom. I'm hungry and want to go home.
Ugh.
Damian Groth, Dr. Lactator, Drew Ledbetter, Face McShooty, Ginger Bolt Head Ass, Hayden. This is a struggle today. I'm sorry. Hayden Hamilton, Lactating Snake Nipples, Pity 104, Shane's Kigyar Mistress, Shane's Garage Resident, The Goob, Tyler Neal again, apparently. Wrath, X3tian, Zengi,
Wraith.
Garrus, Carrion. What did I say?
Wrath.
Wraith. Is Carrie, Keegan, and of course, there's more. Ungoy Food Nipple. You're my of course. And why do you think is there? Who do you think is there? It's me, Mario, Yahoo motherfucker. Wow, that was a struggle today. But yeah, thanks again all for your support. And I'm going to be quite honest, guys. For future reference, I'm going to start shortening some of those. I can't do it anymore. As funny as some of these names are, it's getting a little redonkulous sometimes. I love you. Don't get me wrong. But I have mush mouth, and that gets stressful really fast. So don't get mad at me if I still make you known when I read, but not read the entire paragraph you've laid out for me to read. But once again, thank you very much for joining us this week on Room 237.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us this evening, stranger. If you enjoyed your time with us, please consider supporting us at patreon.com/Jumperscape or join the community at discord.gg/Jumperscape. We thank you for your listenership and hope you enjoyed.